Halloween
Forever.
So did you guys hear about that new it sounds like it's going to be like almost like a cross between like the Expendables and like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you know? But instead of like all the characters being named after like Renaissance artists, they're going to be named after composers. Did you hear about this? No. Is this new news to you, Steve?
Yeah.
I know Stallone, you know, when they were talking to him about it, they were like picking what composers they were going to be. Stallone said, you know, hey, I'll play Beethoven. You know, I think,
God damn it.
You know, Jason.
I'm like already ahead of the joke. The joke is so long and I'm already ahead of it.
Let me finish the joke. JCVD was like, you know, hey, I'll be Mozart, right? Schwarzenegger. You know what he said, Steve?
He said, I'll be Bach.
Welcome, boys and girls, to a very special Showdown episode of Halloween is Forever. I'm Brian.
I'm Steve.
Hey, who's that over there? Who that boy is over there?
Hey, everybody. It's Anthony from They Called Us a Movie.
Hey, Anthony. Thanks for joining us. Very serendipitous that you would be in this place at this time on this Discord server because we're about to do a podcast. Yeah. Anthony's going to join us here as our guest on this month, this August 2023 Showdown episode. Steve, you're getting good at this. Like at this point, you finished most of the jokes before I started them. I feel like of the last maybe four, you finished like 3 of the last 4. I don't know if that's you getting better or me sucking ass.
It was such a long joke. It gave me so much time to figure it out.
It was a long way. It was a long way for a very little payoff.
Yeah. It was, you know, I guess it was on your mind because you went and saw the new Ninja Turtles movie. So
right. Yeah, exactly. I saw the Ninja Turtles movie Friday night. And yeah, I don't know, man. It just tickled me. Just tickled me. All right. Guys, we are here in the beautiful month of August already. Hard to believe. Guys, it's my birthday month. My birthday is this coming weekend when y'all are listening to this out here. So what that means is I'm fucking going full bore here. Getting rip-roaring ass drunk. We got a real hell of a showdown happening here. I got my Nasty Boy shirt on. Somebody's going to get fucking Northern Lights suplexed onto some tacks or something like that. But yeah, it's the August Showdown episode, guys. I'll talk about what the hell that means here in a hot second. But as y'all know, we do throw out some sweet, salty, spicy new content every Monday out on the interwebs. And then once a month, first Monday of the month, we do this here Showdown episode. So we have a topic that was ultimately came from a big old list of topics that either we added onto the spinny wheel or our social media friends and listeners added onto the spinny wheel. But ultimately we picked 3. Those got voted on the social medias on Instagram and Twitter. And then once we had that topic, we each picked a movie, or in this particular case, first time ever, individual scenes within some movies. We each picked one. We're going to discuss them. Like I said, no holds barred. Somebody's getting thrown off the top of the fucking hell in the cell. And then eventually one of these sumbitches, hopefully me, as the defending champ, one of us is going to take home that son of a bitch and championship strap for the month. Anthony's our guest. He's our guest challenger this time around, this month. Let me remind you, the topic for this month is good scenes in bad movies. Was this hard? Steve mentioned he thought this was kind of a hard one for him. Anthony, did you know immediately what you were going to, or did you really have to dig deep?
It was a little difficult. I kind of did a crowd sourcing text to my friends because we at They Call Us Movie, we do cover bad movies all the time. So we did have a list of movies we could take from there, but I actually wound up pulling from when we used to actually write reviews, and we were doing 31 Days of Horror, where we're doing 31 movie reviews for the month of October. This actually, the one I picked actually came from that. So
yeah, remind the folks what your pick is for this year's Showdown episode.
Sure, I picked the 2016 film Holidays, which was an anthology series, and I picked a specific of the movies, probably, you know, towing the line there of what constitutes a scene and what doesn't constitute a scene. Mm-hmm. But I picked the Father's Day short in that, which is a pretty singular idea. It's one extended scene, really, more or less. Mm-hmm. So I thought it fit. But, you know, I was going back and forth between, like, I think Steve mentioned a scene from Jason X. I was also looking at, like, the cryogenic death scene in that movie.
The head smash, the frozen head smash, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking Nightmare on Elm Street 5, which is a bad movie, but it's got some cool visuals and that. I was going through there. But I was thinking, you know, as it's SummerSlam weekend and you guys usually talk wrestling metaphors, you know, so I have a cup of coffee in the big show this week, so I'm swinging for the fences.
Cup of coffee in the big time. Going off the top rope.
Going off the top rope. High risk, high reward with this one.
Feeling the madness here, guys. Yeah, we are. This was an interesting pick, and I've seen this movie that you picked, Holidays, but I actually forgot about this one. This vignette or this short, this segment, whatever you want to call it. I actually forgot about that one. The only one I ever remember is the fucking creepy Easter Bunny, you know, with the Jesus yep. Easter Bunny guy. So, but we'll get into that here in a second. But yeah, I figured it'd be. I was interested to learn because, listen, I'm not trying to weasel my way out of this. I'm not trying to make excuses already. But you do a whole podcast on bad movies, right? Like not exclusively bad movies, but that is. No. That is the crux, you know, of a lot of the episodes that you guys do. So I thought, you know, this guy's coming in here, you know, it's like when you know, Hulk Hogan came over to WCW or something like that. You already got the heat.
It's kind of like it's kind of like facing the Undertaker in a casket match. It's his match.
That's a better analogy. Yeah. It's his match to lose, but what that makes me feel like is I got nothing to lose, right? I'm shooting. That's all it is, right? So, all right. And Steve, remind the folks what scene we're going to be talking about for you and what movie.
We will be talking about the 1986 classic Maximum Overdrive. And the scene I picked is basically the penultimate scene of the film in which the trucks decide to destroy the entire Dixie Boy gas station. Yeah. And it rules hard.
Yeah. I will right off the bat poke a hole here. If you can call it a classic, maybe you shouldn't have picked it. I'm just saying. Is it really that bad? Shit. That's all I'm saying. I actually think it's movies like universally loved. I'm just saying. But yes, I understand why it was.
Internet says otherwise.
It was a horrible bomb, and people just Stephen King wanted to bury it underground.
Yeah, when the director himself is embarrassed and says it's a movie for morons, it. I think classifies.
I'm giving you a hard time. Yeah, I've got of course a movie that is just universally hated, and I think it's due. I think it's due for a resurgence, for a cult following.
No.
I chose a scene from Tooth. No, you're not on board for that, Steve. 2008's The Happening, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and I'm talking about that early scene. Really I think it's the opening scene, if I recall, of the Central Park scene. So we'll talk about that here in a hot sec. But we got the hiccups. We got some other shit we got to do. First of all, if you want to help us suggest topics for this type of content in the future, if you got a topic suggestion that could be a showdown, or even if you got an idea for a mini-sode, you just like, hey, here's this fucking wild ass movie y'all should watch, and then do a mini-sode on it. We do that quite often. Send it our way in the DMs on the social medias at Halloween's Forever on, you know, whatever things be happening. I think I heard Chippy tight on Threads. I did hear that. I don't know if it still is. But then we also have an X now, you know, which obviously Twitter converted entirely, which I think everyone's just waiting for their opportunity to get the fuck off of that piece of shit website. Then we got the Instagram, we got TikToks, or if you want to send us an old-fashioned email, you can do that by sending it to halloweenisforeverpod@gmail.com as well. All right. Also, we've released, between last episode and this episode, we have released our first ever episode of our Patreon exclusive podcast, Family is Forever. Which, Steve, remind the folks, or if they're joining in here, we're starting to get that little, you know, Halloween the spooky season's creeping up on us, so we're starting to get that little bump. So we probably got some new listeners. Explain to the people what Family is Forever is, because it makes no fucking sense. It's asinine.
It makes plenty of sense. It's a social experiment of one person.
Oh, okay.
Of one person. But Family is Forever is our monthly exclusive podcast on Patreon, in which Brian and I will sit down and watch the entirety of the Fast and the Furious franchise, because Brian has never seen any of the films. And
except for the first one.
Except for the first one, and especially now that we've rewatched it and did the episode, he has that one in the bank.
I do.
August, we're moving on to Too Fast, Too Furious.
Too Fast, Too Furious. Yep. And I'm excited. And now I wish that we would have called it, instead of Families Forever, we could have called it Too Fat, Too Furious. And it's two middle-aged overweight guys talking about Fast and the Furious.
Well, maybe that's just the episode name when it comes out.
The episode is Too Fat, Too Furious. Yeah. And it's just us eating like fucking chili dogs and sheets or something like that. Anyway, this movie sucked ass. Fast and Furious first movie. I completely misremembered how truly awful it was. But I will tell you, and I will submit to this, because I have said in the past, I have went on record as saying that you can sign up on the patreon.com/Halloween is Forever. And if you give us $5 a month, you get access to the Discord and some fun exclusive content. And then you also get to, listen to the episodes of Families Forever. $3 gets you some other fun stuff as well. Just give us $5. Give us the paper money and listen to the episode, you fuckers. I have said in the past that it's not worth any amount of money and to stick your money up your ass. I think I've said that to the listeners in the past.
Yes.
But I will admit that I really had a blast talking about how fucking stupid this movie is.
Right.
And it was very fun. It was a very funny episode. We laughed a lot on the episode. So you should check it out. I can't guarantee that it's going to continue to go as swimmingly as it did in the first episode, but check it out over there. It was, I will admit, it was fun to talk about. It was not fun to watch. It was not fun to watch.
It basically, some of our most popular episodes of Halloween is Forever is when we talk about movies that are just garbage.
Just dog shit, yeah.
Because we have no intention of treating the film nice or the filmmakers nice,
right?
And it's just being goofy and having a time, and that's what Family is Forever is. Except for it's all episodes of that. Every episode is going to be that. Like,
you're right.
Yeah, it's never going to be, well, this was actually an enjoyable experience. No. It's all bagging and dick and fart jokes and bafflement.
I think at some point, because we have 19 freaking movies to talk about that franchise, I'm going to start to get so wildly stoned for the viewings that it's going to just, it's going to go off the fucking rails. I'm looking forward to that. Also, I just thought about this. We should consider this as well. We're talking about how Glenn Danzig, the Gabagoo himself, is coming to Pittsburgh soon for a concert. We were talking about making a pilgrimage downtown to see Glenn Danzig and Behemoth and a couple other things. That is a great opportunity for a Halloween is Forever meetup there at the Glenn Danzig concert.
At the Danzig.
Hey, we're going to see the Danzig. But yeah, maybe that'll be part of the part of the Patreon situation as well. Anyway, again, patreon.com/Halloween is Forever. Go ahead and check it out. All right, all of this plugs into things out of the way for us, real quick, because we always end up forgetting and doing this at the end, which I think is stupid. How about, Anthony, tell us a little bit about your show, because if people like our show, they probably gonna like your show, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Your mileage may vary, but yeah, they call this a movie. We watch bad movies, so this is a fitting topic to talk about this week. Steve has joined us for a couple episodes, usually during the Halloween season, and we covered Death Spa with him earlier last month. Recently, we watched the Robert Z'Dar starring classic Killing American Style. And yeah, so we're a weekly podcast. We talk about bad quote in quotes, cult classics, B movies, and all that kind of stuff. So you can check us out on all those socials at TickTam Pod and wherever you get your podcast, just for looking for They Called Us a Movie.
Go down there to the podcast store. They're down there. They're on sale. I just watched Death Spa not that long ago. Like probably within the last 2 months. I actually watched it with my wife. That movie's fucking hilarious. I forgot how funny and stupid that movie is, and how just,
it was a lot of fun.
But also like how charming it is, kind of too. Like it's really genuinely enjoyable.
I was giving serious consideration to picking the opening of that film for this episode because it's a long artistic one shot with a little bit of cheese for the lightning hitting the sign that turns into Death Spa. Yeah. But otherwise, it's pretty artistic and leads into like this, dreamlike dance sequence. And I was like, man, I kind of want to pick that, but also I just did the episode on there, and it feels like too on the nose. Feels like cheating, appealing to Anthony of like, remember when I was on your show? Remember how much fun we had?
Right.
You remember?
Remember? It would have worked too. It would have worked.
He's a sucker for that kind of stuff. I love how many people have to die before they start to really consider shutting things down at the spa. It's like 30 people are dead, and they're like, maybe we should just shut it down. Maybe we should go out of business.
It's a real Mayor in Jaws scenario where the lawyer is like, you can't shut it down. This is our best. Our Mardi Gras party is where we get all our subscriptions.
Yeah, you know how that works with gyms having parties.
Yeah.
But anyway, all right. Before we get into these here scenes, I think everybody's got a beer here. Let's talk about some beers, geese. Steve, I know you're drinking that gasolina over there. I think you said. So what do you got?
Oh yeah, I got gasolina. I am drinking from Three Floyds, one of the most beloved breweries, full of garbage, I would say, and also not garbage, but people make a pilgrimage to Indiana to go see a metal concert and a stout release. Like that's garbage. That's garbage drinking. Yeah. But today I am drinking Pillar of Beasts, and it is a 13.5% barley wine style ale that is salted caramel. And then aged in bourbon oak barrels on vanilla and cocoa nibs.
There's obviously elements of that sound good. I like a bourbon barrel aged beer. I like cocoa nibs as an ingredient because it doesn't add all like candyish, disgusting sweetness. Mm-hmm. But then you lost me right off the bat with salted caramel.
Yeah,
it's just a flavor that rarely doesn't come across as completely artificial to me in flavoring things, whether it's beer or I mean, unless it's like literal salted caramels or a confection or ice cream, it's just, to me, sounds artificial. I don't know why.
I'll say it is a little mellow. You don't get any of that vanilla or cocoa nibs, so that those just might be a little bit of sweetness coming through. Mm-hmm. But it drinks pretty like hot up front, like a hot barley wine in a barrel, and then finishes off with a salted caramel. It's not too gross. I was expecting very gross, but it's actually not too gross.
If it wasn't like 90 degrees outside, I think I would be more inclined to agree with you. The idea of drinking just motor oil, caramel flavored motor oil on like a 90-degree day sounds disgusting.
I am sweaty.
I can only imagine. Anthony, what do you got over there? What you drinking?
I have, and this is the first time I've ever had it, so I have to look at the can. Mm-hmm. It's from Bolero Snort Brewery in Carlstadt, New Jersey. Okay. It is called the Bull Shark Fruited Sour.
Oh, all right.
It is a sour ale with raspberry, passion fruit, prickly pear, and lemon.
Got a little
so it's very good.
Left over from Shark Week, I assume.
Yeah, right. So it's very good. It's got a nice color to it. And my wife is a very big critic of beer itself, but she actually likes this. Usually she's just like, every time she tastes the beer that I have, she's like, it just tastes like beer.
Yeah.
But she actually liked this one. So it's very good. Very flavorful.
Interesting. I like it. I'm not familiar with that brewery.
This is the first time I've ever seen anything from them.
Yeah. I have got.
I don't even know where Karlstad, New Jersey is.
I was going to say, I know where a lot of New Jersey towns are. Karlstad, that's got to be up north somewhere because I have no idea where that is. I have some self-respect. Is basically when I want to preface this by you degens drinking your Gloop Glop. I'm drinking a little of the Augustiner Braun München Edelstoff Helagerbier. Little of the Helles, the export version of Augustiner Helles, the Edelstoff. So basically slightly higher ABV, 5.7% rather than I think like 4.7% version of their Helles. So I think people call it like a Dortmunder, like a Dortmunder export, even though it's not from Dortmund, it's from Munich. I think if somebody called it a fest beer, they probably wouldn't be too far off, but it's like a hoppier, stronger version of the Helles. And I love this beer. It's so fucking good.
Whatever, Dork, you're outnumbered this episode. It's slime time.
It is. It's slime time over here with these fucking Gloop Gloppers, but I'm holding it down, drinking a good old fashioned German Lagerbier. But yeah, somebody's got to do it, right? Somebody's got to, have a little bit of, keep our name, with a little respect on the name, right, for the podcast, because otherwise, Soju Steve's fucking drinking gasoline and Zoom juice.
Oh yeah. So I want to jump just a little bit of beer kind of news just to get, because you were saying how, Brian, you are not into the salted caramel. Have you seen what the new pumpkin is for this year?
I have not.
It is salted caramel pumpkin.
Lame. Lame. I always get some pumpkin. Every year I'll get a 4-pack of it. I've got a lot of nostalgia for it. I've been drinking that beer since fucking probably 2006, at least. I love the beer. Feel like it's gotten sweeter and sweeter every year.
Yes.
Maybe it's just my palate has gotten away from sweetness. But most of the variants on it, with the exception of Warlock, just I think I could leave him. I think I could leave every one of them.
The coffee one I like, because the coffee one actually dials back on the sweetness.
Yeah, you're right. The coffee one was pretty good too. I forgot about that one. But wasn't there like a rum barrel aged one?
Oh, that was terrible.
There was.
Yeah.
Oh, good God. And then there was I don't think it was Mexican chocolate, but it was something like that, right? I forget.
Yeah, they've had a number of just throwing shit at the wall. Straight
poop. If Meg was here, she would be telling us about how she can't even smell it because she used to have to do all the spice additions and, she can't deal with the smell of that beer anymore. But yeah, I do like it every year. I will not be partaking in the salted caramel version of it. Honestly, listen, I don't know if you remember last year, but I got behind that Jacko, that Sam Adams Jacko.
Yeah.
Nothing special, but low ABV, tons of spice, really well balanced, cheap, dirt cheap, killer pumpkin beer. I mean, Jim Cook can fuck himself, but that beer's good. That's good. Isn't Sam Calagione taking over now? Isn't it like he's like going to be the new guy over at Boston Beer / Dogfish Head? I don't know.
I assume that's the retirement string or whatever. Whenever Jim Cook fucks off, Sam Calagione will take his place.
Yeah, but that beer absolutely fucks. All right. Let's get into, that got me excited too, Steve, because now the spooky shit. Kate picked up, actually not Kate, but a friend of ours picked up, because we don't have a Sam's Club membership, got me the 4-pack that they're selling at Sam's Club of the Monster cereals. It's got the Count Chocula, it's got the Boo Berry, it's got the Frankenberry, and then the new one. I assume you've seen the new one?
The apple caramel, caramella or whatever.
Yeah, caramella creeperins, guys. It's like a caramel apple thing. It's going to be probably dog shit. I don't care. I am so excited to try it. I'm a fucking Monster cereal fiend, so I'm excited for that. That just got me psyched up to try all the dumb new spooky snacks this year. Yeah, it's pretty much Halloween, by the way, guys. FYI, it's August. My birthday's next week. That's the official kickoff to Halloween season.
It's under 100 days to Halloween.
The Acme near me is already selling Halloween candy, so
hell yeah. Bring it to me. I'm looking for it the day after July 5th. I'm looking for it, and I get pissed if I don't find it.
I hear Sheets has got some as well, so yeah, go to Sheets.
Oh yeah, I already had my first Reese's Pumpkin of the year. They got a Twix, a Frankenstein Twix that got a green situation, a green cookie on the inside.
How'd you have a Reese's Pumpkin this early and just not it be melted? Like, it's been 90 plus degrees.
This is the time to get them. No, this is the time to get them because they're so fresh.
Hot off the line,
so fresh
from the Reese's factory.
People don't realize that candy bars, there is freshness associated with candy bars. It's like people don't realize that beer, ages. Mm-hmm. Candy bars, a fresh Reese's, so good. Like an 8-month-old Reese's, garbage. Fresh, got to get those freshies. I'm cruising for freshies at the Sheetsies.
I ain't dealing with no shelfie Mallow cup sitting on the shelf.
No. Fuck you. Show me the money. Show me the freshies. All right, let's get into these fucking scenes, these movies. So for those of you new to the show, like I said, your boy does have that son of a bitchin' championship strap. Been walking around with it for a few weeks now. And I get to pick the order in which we discuss these here scenes. So, as I say, to the victor go the spoils. I think I am going to bring up the rear. I'm going to be an old backdoor boy again. I'm going to do third. Let's do this. Let's go Steve first. Then we go Anthony. We sandwich. We make a little Anthony sandwich. He'll go in the middle. And then, like I said, I'm going to be a backdoor boy once again because it paid off for me in the past. So let's do it that way. How's that sound?
Sure. Yeah.
Works for me.
Yeah, let's go me first and just shoot the load. Just
that's what I would call it.
Yeah.
Just shoot the load.
This is definitely just shoot the load. Everything goes off at once. This is explosive. Hot start.
It is. It's a hot start. We're getting a hot start.
So yes, even though we're going to be talking about just one scene, there's a couple things I'll point out through Maximum Overdrive, and the other two they can present as they want. But there's just a few things I just want to talk about as far as Maximum Overdrive. One, it is from 1986. We all know this, and it is starring Emilio Estevez. We also know this. Mm-hmm. What people may not know is that there's a number of other, I wouldn't say full stars, but like just character actors who pop up. Most notable is Pat Hingle. Pat Hingle is, by far like a huge character actor up until, like the mid 2000s when he passed away. But I would say everybody knows him from the Tim Burton era Batman series, being Commissioner Gordon. But he is absolutely unhinged in this movie as just the sleazeball Dixie Boy owner who also has militia-style weapons.
I got eggs on. I got eggs on. I don't give a goddamn. You get your ass in here, boy. He's wearing like a fucking Colonel Sanders suit, just like in the middle of the summer.
Oh, yeah. He's full on, like, probably related to Porky somehow. Like Porky and Boss Hogg are in his family tree.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And Foghorn Leghorn's like his uncle
as well. I see they are.
At any point, you just expect him to go, now I'm just a simple country lawyer. Like, and dab the back of his neck with a handkerchief.
Now I'm just a simple gas station owner, and I know that these trucks ain't supposed to be driving themselves.
They ain't a supposed to. I say they ain't a supposed to.
We also get Yeardley Smith in a role that predates The Simpsons. You'll everybody should recognize her as the voice of Lisa, and you should recognize it in this movie as like, wow, that sounds a lot like Lisa Simpson, but saying cusses.
Saying swear words, hollering. Yeah, that's got to be like pretty much this and Lisa Simpson. I mean, I feel like there's other things, but you could give me all night and I couldn't come up with them. Like, that's what I know her from, is those two things.
Yeah. And she's just, but her voice is Lisa's voice. She's not really she's not Hank Azarian this where he's got a whole bunch of different voices. It's like, that's her.
Yeah, that's just her walking around voice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like Harry Shearer, who like, he can change his voice a little bit and you go, oh, okay, yeah. Two other notables in this. Frankie Faison, who just I love because he was Barney as the orderly in the like Hannibal Lecter series of films, but also was Commissioner Irv in The Wire. I just love The Wire.
Still haven't watched it.
Yeah, just that one's just a personal one for me. But another one that may have gone missed by a lot of the people who watched was Giancarlo Esposito, who most people know from Breaking Bad as Gus Fring. Yeah. He is the guy who gets electrocuted in the arcade.
He's the guy stuffing his pockets full of smokes.
Yeah.
and grabbing quarters and shit.
Yeah,
very young. A young Gus Fring.
Yeah. But like this isn't even his first role. I guess his first role dates all the way back to the 50s. He was on a soap opera very early. So like
wow. I did not know that. So wait, how old was he in this? Because I would have assumed he was like late teens, early 20s in 86. Yeah, maybe he was older than that.
Yeah, no, I think he was probably like a child actor in the 50s. Yeah. And then, he was probably in his early 30s at this point.
Yeah, he just might have been able to play a little, a little younger, but
yeah.
So yeah, I'm thinking about him like, dang, he was getting up there when Breaking Bad was around, but
yeah, he's been around. So, yeah, just a couple notable standouts in this film. And then the other notable standout is that Stephen King directed this film. And
he directed it and quick cameo.
Quick cameo in the beginning.
Yep.
ATM calls him an asshole.
Right. To which he calls out to somebody off screen, hey, this thing called me an asshole.
I love it. I mean, in Creepshow, like, I just love when Stephen King, because he doesn't, act a ton, but he's very hammy. Yeah. And he also is cross-eyed, which I really appreciate. He's not super cross-eyed in this, but in other times when he's on camera, you get that bit of cross-eyedness, and I just appreciate that.
Yeah, like, you can almost guarantee, like, he's a cameo in his own film, or in any adaptation of his film. He's going to be a cameo, and he's going to be like the weird bit of levity that just like winks at the audience and says, this was a book. This was written. It's not real. Don't be too scared.
Yeah, he does. He has a good sense of humor, obviously, just having, if you've ever seen him in interviews and stuff like that. But I do like that he doesn't take himself too seriously. He always makes himself a goofy character.
Yeah. Now, whether or not he remembers doing any of this.
That is true. Yeah, I assume Steve will get into the just like metric ton of coke he was doing on a daily basis around this time in his life, I think.
Yeah, and it's pretty well documented that he was coked out of his mind while shooting this film, and it shows in a lot of the things that he was putting on screen. We talked about it in the last episode while we were, discussing our picks, but like this film is full of possible scenes that are like pretty awesome. We talked about that opening bridge scene where he just decides like, oh yeah, I'm going to open an actual bridge and then have a bunch of cars fall backwards and it's going to rule and it's going to be full of watermelons? ? For some reason. And
that is like, cause I've only, been over the kind of, what are those bridges called that I want to say it's drawbridge, but that's like some medieval shit. Whatever those bridges are called that kind of open up like that. Mm-hmm. There's one that I used to have to go over all the time when I went down to Delaware for work, and I would always think about it every single time, and I'm like, it's kind of fucking terrifying. Like the fact that this bridge could just like somebody, there's maybe some like drunk dipshit over there, like manning the controls, and he fucks it up, and then it just opens up as you're going over it.
Yeah,
it's terrifying.
Or even worse, like a boat crashes into it when it's closed. It's like another drunk dipshit thing that can happen. But yeah, so like you have the bridge scene, you have the scene where the Coke machine, it's like at the ball field, so like the Coke machine goes haywire, and then a child is crushed by a steamroller, which
him and his bike.
Yeah, him and his bike, which apparently is one of the scenes that was like heavily censored. So the original cut is that they put like a giant blood bag in the kid's head. So when it hits the kid's head, it splatters everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think I probably would have picked that scene because that was like that was going to be my other choice. But they censored that one, so not so much. And then
I think that was one of my notes was like, this should have been your pick.
Yeah.
Because I always forget about it. I've probably seen this movie half a dozen times, and I always forget about it because they cut it on TV. Mm-hmm. Like if you catch it on whatever channel, like they'll cut it. But I've seen the scene now a few times, and every time it surprises me.
Yeah, I'll get into why I didn't pick it. And it's mostly just because like all of these scenes, which is why I didn't pick any ones except for the one I did. All of these scenes don't end with a good punch. So like the steamroller scene doesn't end with the steamroller crushing a kid. It ends with the one protagonist kid riding away on his bike, and it's kind of just falls. It's cool when that kid also rides through the town and like everybody's dead, and then the lawnmower comes to life and the ice cream truck is after him, but also he just kind of gets away. So there's not like, it doesn't have the great big punch. And the other scene that probably would be a good contender, but it came out before RoboCop. So Stephen King hadn't seen RoboCop in the way Ed 209 shreds that dude with the squibs. So he didn't have the experience to see that army truck with the mounted machine gun. He didn't know to include more squibs in that scene. If there were more squibs in that scene, it would have been better, but there just weren't. So,
yeah. Well, I have some thoughts. I don't know if we're going to talk more about the mounted gun on the little fucking trolley or whatever the hell it is. But I'm pretty sure the swivel thing that the 50 cal machine gun is mounted on is not mechanically move. It's not like it doesn't move around mechanically.
Right.
So why can the gun point? I understand there's 1,000 other things that are stupid about this movie, and I shouldn't be focusing on that. But that thing becomes such a threat to them, kind of, but then not also the way they kill is Emilio Estevez walks up to it, says like, we got to talk about, I think the line is, we about to talk about human stuff, something you might never know nothing about, which is like, I'm now meshing that with a line from Next Friday. And then he just puts a fucking grenade on it and it goes, run away. He just spins it.
Yeah.
And runs away. And it's like, that thing, I don't know.
If that thing could fully control itself, he wouldn't have been able to spin it. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Of course. Yeah, it's just on a fucking swivel. It's just on like, and he just spins it like it's a little kid's fucking, propeller hat and runs away.
Yeah. Look, that is partially why this is a bad movie. It's one of the number of things that doesn't make any fucking sense because there's so many mechanical things that happen that don't actually have mechanical, like they show how many times like buttons being depressed. But that's not how buttons work. You wouldn't have to show you wouldn't have to show the button being depressed. It would just happen on the inside, but you have to show it for the audience because it's a movie for morons.
I do really like the idea of thinking of Stephen King coked out of his gourd, and it's like that meme with the ICP going like, how do magnets work? Right. But it's Stephen King coked out of his brain going, how does buttons work?
Buttons, how does they work? So just to touch on Stephen King being coked out of his mind, there is an apparent rumor that has never been confirmed or denied that our own George A. Romero was the ghost director of this film for any time Stephen King was too blasted to be on set. And that
I'd believe it.
Yeah. And that like he regularly kind of fed King, what the shots were supposed to be and like helped out with editing to try and make it like a more complete movie. So apparently George Romero's hands are all over the film, but like they never came out and said it because obviously I don't think George wanted his name associated with it, but also at the same time, he likes Stephen King. Like, obviously, he was in Creepshow. You know, they didn't have like a contentious relationship. So, but also, I don't want to. Yeah. I don't want to stake my record on this.
No, it makes a lot of sense because the movie, obviously, you know, it was not well received. You know, Stephen King was really embarrassed of it and all that sort of thing. And like, you know, it's a very common, I don't know if it's it's a real quote, but it's one of those quotes that gets attributed, whether or not it actually was said or not, or uttered by Stephen King, is when people say like, hey, why have you never, you know, gotten behind the camera again, or, you know, directed or whatever. And he always says, have you seen Maximum Overdrive? That's like the quote that you get from all the time. And if he actually did direct it, I feel like enough time has passed and it has such a cult following now. And it is like amongst the horror community, it is a pretty beloved movie. Like for its shitty, you know, schlockiness and just overall being a very fun film. And I feel like if he actually would have directed it earnestly, he probably would have embraced that by now. But because he probably didn't, he doesn't.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, because he did half-ass it and he was fucking blasted out of his mind, so he doesn't remember it. So like, yeah, it doesn't feel like an earnest attempt at directing, you know. Whereas like, I think a kind of a similar story may be like Frank Miller, the comic book writer. He, you know, who also wrote RoboCop 2. He directed Sin City, the movie, and like the sequel and The Spirit, and he had like a lot of hand holding done by Robert Rodriguez in that case. So I think it's kind of similar, and like George Romero probably did a lot of hand holding for Stephen King just to help him get through it. But I think now, you know, Stephen King might be able to put together like an actual good movie with how much time he spent around movies and how many of his works have been adapted. I think he could probably put one together if he, you know, actually gave it a try and wasn't blasted all zooted up.
Yeah, you would think so. Also, on that same note, how fucked up do you have to be too fucked up to be on a movie set in 1986? Like, you have to be you have to be melted into a pile on the ground.
Yeah. Scorsese put absolute bangers out when he was scoped out of his head.
That's what I say. Like, he had to have been like, Stephen King had to have been just walking around with blood jetting out of his nose at all times, just like screaming and physically assaulting people. Like, for him to not be allowed on a movie set in 86.
He was sexually harassing Pat Hingle. He's like, yeah, pull them tit outs. Let me see them titties. Let me see them.
Yeah. He just had to be out of fucking control.
He was doing the Kubrick, you know, 212 takes, but it's just that awful bathroom scene between Emilio Estevez and the other fat guy on the toilet. He's doing 212 takes of that.
Do it again. Run it again.
Louder. Make the fart noises louder.
Meanwhile, all he's hearing in his brain is AC/DC.
Right, yeah. He refused to like watch any of the sound on playback or anything. He just had AC/DC headphones on.
Just fucking ripping.
Yeah. So just shortly before we finally get to the scene, I do want to go to the bona fides of why this is a bad film. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has the worst critic score out of all the movies we'll talk about tonight. Even beating The Happening, it has a 15%.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah, that's bad. And then if we go over to Letterboxd, it has a 2.6, which may or may not sound bad because that sounds like over half, but you have to consider it in terms of fucking Untapped scores, where anything under 3 is trash.
Yeah.
So yeah, 2.6 on Letterboxd. It is, you know, again, it's one of those movies, and I think Stephen King is right when he says it's it's a movie for morons, because both you and I, Brian, we've said in the past, like, we love this movie as kids, and all children are morons. You know?
Yeah.
We don't understand why this is bad until we rewatch it as adults and go, oh, this is fucking garbage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's trash, but it's charming trash. Like The Happening, which we're not talking about yet, obviously, not charming trash for the most part. Like, this is charming trash. I mean, Emilio Estevez is a fucking movie star. You know what I mean? Like, you just put him on screen, he shines. He's so likable. He's so cool. He's so, he's obviously a good looking guy. Like, Emilio Estevez is a fucking star. You put him on screen, he's going to do well. They spent some damn money on this movie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's terrible, but it's charmingly terrible.
Yeah. Like, again, it's a movie of scenes, which are great. Again, if you're a child or if you're zooted, it's fucking fantastic, because you don't think about how, like, the relationship doesn't make any sense, or, how a lot of the mechanical stuff doesn't make sense. You don't think about that. You just watch it and go, oh, what? Yeah, awesome. And then, that weird gas station montage of filling up the trucks is also weird, but you have a time with it.
That's the best part. I love that. I love when the trucks call all their friends and make them fill them up with gas till they're out of gas.
Yeah.
And it's like a montage of, I think we talked about before, it's like a working at the car wash montage.
Yeah.
But it's them being forced to fill up the tanks of 18-wheelers from a gas pump at a gas station, because the trucks have come alive because they're in the tail of a comet or something. Like, if you just say it face level like that, face value, it's so fucking great.
Yeah. Well, it's because aliens are hiding in the tail of the comet. They got shot down by a Russian telecom satellite that happened to have intercontinental ballistic missiles on it.
Well, and they say it like tongue in cheek at the end. They're just like, and just basically accuse, like, the Russians, it's a satellite, but it's equipped with nukes or something like that. Like, it's written by cocaine. Like,
yeah, which also, like, it's also very similar to a news report that is in RoboCop that they're talking about, like, a satellite that shoots a death laser that kills 4 presidents in a very tongue-in-cheek fashion. And it's just like, this movie would have been so much more awesome if Stephen King had seen RoboCop before. Like, if this movie came out 88, this movie would rule, because he would have seen RoboCop and he would know all the things that emulate from RoboCop, but he didn't. So, well. On to the scene. As we've already established, the plot of the film is the trucks and everything else mechanical comes alive because aliens in the tail of a comet make it happen, and they decide to try to kill all the humans. And all of our protagonists are herded into the Dixie Boy gas station, and they are forced to pump gas, and they're forced to live on the rule of the trucks, including the Green Goblin truck, which is a toy truck. And
what's it called? Some Happy Something Toys or something?
Yeah, it's like another load of joy is heading your way or whatever. But for some reason, it had the Green Goblin face on it. The trucks are constantly doing this kind of cowboy, like, circling the wagons of, like, they're just running around the outside of the gas station, keeping everybody in, running into any cars that try to come in. And then, you have the protagonists all inside, and they do their best to fight back, sometimes with rocket launchers hidden in the basement, just so happens. But, the final kind of end of the film comes when they all decide to make an escape. And the escape does start with that scene Brian was talking about earlier, where Emilio Estevez just puts a grenade on the army truck and spins the machine gun. This gives them their opening, because now this is the only projectile truck. So they get rid of that. And then under the cover of night, they escape out a sewer pipe. And this is when the trucks fucking lose it. They go absolute bonkers apeshit and tear everything down. And it is one of the most glorious things that isn't a monster truck rally. It is just trucks running headlong into a gas station that they built. Like, this wasn't a gas station that existed. So this is how you know, like, it's a total waste of money and how awesome this scene is. They built this gas station. They had to turn away real truckers through production because truckers were showing up trying to fill up, and they're like, no, this isn't a real thing. This is just for a movie. Go away. Go down the road. But they built this entire gas station. And then this is also how you know this film was basically shot in sequence, because they tore it down with all the trucks. So again, you have trucks running into the kitchen, running into the dining room. You get a good killdozer coming in through the dining room, smashing up tables, and then full-on killdozer. You get the killdozer then attacks a car and appears to be laughing as it attacks the car. You can kind of hear it. You can kind of hear it in the sound design that they loop the sound of the treads in a way that it sounds like the dozer is laughing as it smashes the car underneath it.
Well, they're going straight like monster truck show.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they are crashing into buildings, just kind of, you know, you could look at it as one of two ways. You could look at it as like, it's like a kamikaze attack on the building. Like, let's just pull out all the stops. Or you could view it as, you know, kid seats are just $10 and we're just gonna just literally roll over every fucking car. Like we're just here to smash shit.
Yeah.
It's, you know,
you only need the edge.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the great shots is there's a dump truck and it has its dump all the way up. And you can just tell whoever's driving that truck is having the most fun of their life, because they hit full speed into the gas station awning and just rip it the fuck down, like going at it as fast as they can. They couldn't give a shit. And then you have a liquid oxygen truck has plowed into the kitchen and it's starting to spark. And this is where you get one of the greatest explosions. I don't know anywhere you can find a better explosion. It would be hard, but the entire gas station is vaporized by just an enormous explosion. And then
it's alarmingly large.
Yeah.
Like you're surprised. Yeah. You are, every time you watch it, you are continually surprised by how big the explosion is.
And like, you can tell like how far away everyone had to be just to film it, because it's vaporizing an entire gas station. And then they followed up with like what I can only describe as like WCW level of pyro with the two
that's what I was
going to
say. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So the initial explosion looks like it was planned. Like, it doesn't look like a spontaneous gas station explosion. It looks like a movie explosion, which is not bad. It's fine. Then a couple of explosions after that are really much more realistic. Like, it's like, oh, that looks like, maybe the propane tank at a grill exploded. It's a smaller little tiny explosion, you know? And then, yeah, it's Halloween Havoc, you know, 1997, and there's just some sparklers going off.
Yeah, there's just sparklers and there's just pillars of flame. And, you know, you just kind of get, you get small intercuts between all of this mayhem and the protagonists. And they're just basically, you know, making small comments. At one point, Emilio Estevez says, like, Jesus is coming back and he's pissed.
It would be funnier if Emilio Estevez was like, by God, it's Kane. That's gotta be Kane.
I mean, again, Stephen King had to wait even more years, so he would have had to see RoboCop and Kane. You know, you can't. How long are we going to put this movie off?
Yeah.
But yeah, it is one of the greatest explosions in film history. Apparently, there's some lore that the explosion was so hot that it almost melted the film in the camera. Which that's also pretty great if you're so coked up and you have an explosion so large that it ruins what you filmed. There's something, I don't know. There's
I refuse to believe that they weren't blasting AC/DC at a bajillion decibels on the set while they shot that explosion.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think that was, required. but let's not.
And Stephen King was just coked out, just blowing loads everywhere, just like so psyched. He's like, "Oh, we're winning an Oscar." He is just out of his fucking brain.
Just air guitaring the entire time.
Yeah, he's doing the freaking Chuck Berry, like hopping around.
Walks in front of the shot at one
point. He takes a bow. He walks in front of the camera and takes a bow.
Butt ass naked.
Just ass naked, hard as a rock.
Yeah. There is, I mean, you're right that there's no way that they weren't blaring AC/DC while they blew up the gas station, but it is also important to point out that during the monster truck demolition derby, that, AC/DC is the soundtrack to this. It's unfortunately not one of the more recognizable ones. They already used Hell's Bells earlier in the movie, which I think would have been more perfect for this scene, but that's just me. Yeah. Not everything can be super perfect, but, a monster truck demolition derby followed by giant explosion is pretty damn close.
Yeah, sure.
The only thing I wish I could have included in this scene, but I can't because it's the scene right after, as the protagonists escape down the road towards a dock, the Green Goblin truck rolls down the road and passes a school bus that has a plane crashed into it. And just the implication of a plane saw a school bus full of children and decided to 9/11 it is pretty hilarious.
It is. It's dark.
Yeah.
I mean, this movie, I can only imagine if Stephen King had like final cut on this and he just was able to just do whatever he wanted and nothing got edited and nothing got... And it just was the director's cut, if you will, of this movie has got to be unfucking believable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's probably a scene of just, the kid with his head exploding, just like, like a chainsaw walking on chainsaw legs with a chainsaw head going into like a kindergarten or something. Right. Like it was just so fucking out of control. Some of the things Stephen King thought of and probably pitched, and they all just like glad handed and were like, sure, yeah, we'll get to that. And then he forgot about it immediately. We're probably like borderline criminal.
I think that's a goal for when time travel gets invented, is to go back in time with $10 million and inject $10 more million into this movie just to see what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it ends up being like tons of civilians die in real life because he somehow, gets his hands on uranium or something, enriched uranium.
There's a permanent scorch mark in North Carolina that no one can go near.
Yeah. It's Chernobyl of the Carolinas.
So, but yes, that is Maximum Overdrive with probably the most maximum of endings, just explosions galore and trucks going to party town on a building, destroying a building that was built. I mean, you don't get that happening past probably 1995, maybe. You'd be hard pressed to find a film that's so destructive with its money.
No, I can't think of one really past that. The thing, and again, this doesn't affect the scene necessarily, but it's just a testament to how like stupid the pacing of this movie is this isn't really the climactic scene. I mean, it is, but there's still plenty of time left. Not plenty, but there's still time left in this film. And then really what is supposed to be the climactic scene is also an explosion, but it's Emilio Estevez shooting a fairly large bottle rocket out of the end of a grenade launcher and into the goblin truck and saying, I forget what the quote is. It's really, it's his hasta la vista
Right.
line. I forget what he says, but
Yeah.
It's like adios, motherfucker. Or something like that.
Adios, motherfucker. Yes, exactly. But he's holding, I assume, listen, I'm not a munitions expert, but I'm pretty sure it's like a grenade launcher. But he's using it, and they try to, the effect, make it look like it's an RPG. And it shoots like a clearly like something that is meant for recreational purposes, like some sort of bottle rocket out of it. It's so bad looking.
Yeah. I equate it to like, if you've ever watched like a stand-up comedy special, the biggest laugh isn't the last laugh. The biggest laugh is somewhere, buried in the special somewhere. Maybe it's closer towards the end, but like usually the last laugh that the comic goes out on isn't always like the biggest one. It's just like it's just like a good one. You go, okay, yes. But the funniest part was earlier. And it's the same thing with Maximum Overdrive. The funniest parts were earlier.
Got to give them a chance to wind down, or else if you don't give people a chance to wind down, then everybody's going to be walking out of the theater with a boner. It's going to be embarrassing.
They're too rowdy. Too rowdy.
Yeah.
That's why you got to give them the small wind down of like one guy gets run over by a truck, and then that truck gets blown up, and they sail away on a boat. That's a nice ease in to going back to the normal world. You can't have them all tuned up, running out like, did you see that fucking gas station? Holy shit.
Holy shit. People are just fighting and fucking in the parking lot. Like, it's just, it's chaos.
Too much power.
It's too much. It's too much.
So,
all right. Any final thoughts on this, Steve, before we move on to Anthony's?
No, this rules, and you guys are going to be hard pressed to fucking present anything better. I mean, come on.
It's just a bunch of explosions. It's cool.
Don't ever.
It's cars. It's the best part isn't even the explosion. The best part is the killdozer crashing into the diner slowly and then pulling back out, like with the scene on the inside. Like, that is the coolest scene, or the coolest shot, I guess. But
don't ever just say
all
it's
right.
just a bunch of explosions.
It's fine, Steve. It's fine. All right, Anthony. Let's get into yours.
All right. Okay. So, Holidays 2016 is an anthology series film, and the theme is that all of the short films are based around holidays. And I'm going to say that is basically where the connection of these stops. I think this doesn't have a terrible IMDb score, doesn't have a bad Rotten Tomato score, but I think, to me, this is a bad anthology because of the tonal whiplash that we get as we go from movie to movie. The film I picked is Father's Day. I will get to that in a minute, but it is followed by the worst film in the movie, directed by the most well-known director, who must have been on just phoning it in. I think he directed this from a Zoom call. Kevin Smith.
I think his daughter must have directed, because she's in it.
Right.
She's in it.
Yeah.
This isn't Yoga Hosers bad, but it is minimal efforts by him.
Ever since Kevin Smith discovered weed, he has made some crazy choices as like what kind of movie he's going to make. I think this movie, this short at least, was like something he did on the side of Yoga Hosers, because like you're saying, his daughter's in it, and then also Harley Morenstein, who most people recognize from Epic Mealtime on YouTube. He's also in Yoga Hosers. And Ashley Greene, she's in this as well.
But not the Ashley Greene. Not like the Twilight Ashley Greene, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's just another girl that spells her name exactly the same.
Yeah, but she was also in Yoga Hosers and in this short. Yeah, it's just another Ashley Greene, not the Twilight. I've never seen Twilight, but I looked at it on IMDb. Yeah. But so like this feels like this was something he directed on the side of Yoga Hosers, and was just like, hey, you want to do this as well? and everybody signed up and made this garbage.
I mean, it shot it in a day, an afternoon, maybe.
I think there is a generation of film school people that have a serious case against him for like a class action lawsuit, because me being in one of those, because I was 16, I saw Clerks and I was like, I could do that, so I went to film school. And now he's putting out this shit where he's like, he was super into Canada for a while, and this is one of them, because I think the Harley Morenstein is also Canadian.
He is.
Yoga Hosers and Tusk, all Canadian, and
he's
then
almost painfully Canadian.
Yeah.
Like his,
and
like he's so Canadian, it's unbelievable.
Right. And like there was supposed to be a third movie in his Canadian trilogy that I don't think ever got made, which was Moose Jaws, which was supposed to be Jaws with a moose. But besides that, we've got two movies that have weird impregnations to them.
Yeah, there's a lot of pregnancy themes throughout. A lot of these ones.
Two movies basically end with someone giving birth to the Antichrist. One dressed as Danny Zuko from Greece. The other one just some sort of commune sort of situation. So I think the movie I picked is actually kind of the anomaly of all of them. Because there's a Seth Green story which is almost like a second-rate Black Mirror episode. There's and like some of them are okay. We get like the weird Easter Jesus bunny, which is a lot of these movies just wind up being the monster at the end of the story, which actually the story I picked is not different from it, and it's my least favorite part of the story I picked. Was the ending.
I would say this anthology is the best example of endings are hard. It's something we bring up on the show from time to time, but just like writing endings is hard, and nobody fucking does it right in this anthology. All of the endings are fucking trash.
They're bad, except for you know what, the one that I'm referring to as Uzumaki for Filthy Illiterate Irish Locusts, which is the St. Patrick's Day one.
Okay, yeah, I did like that one, just because it ends with dancing with a snake.
A snake with a pompadour? That's fucking brilliant. And it's almost it's obviously like taking a lot of Wicker Man, kind of influence from the Wicker Man. And it's just silly. It's bonkers. That one's fully bonkers. But Anthony, you mentioned the tonal whiplash you get. You go from Valentine's Day, which is like kind of dark. There's like a weird pedo swim coach, and then someone gets their heart ripped out. Like the Valentine's Day one's pretty dark, to St. Patrick's Day, which is super silly, to Easter, which is pretty dark as well, because the Jesus bunny man, like again, gives off weird pedo vibes. Like he's got the kid like sticking her hand in his like wound, Jesus's side wound. But he seems like he's like kind of getting boned up because of it. It's real uncomfortable.
And then he gives her egg communion, which is also fucking weird. And then Mother's Day, which is just so many just honkers in the Mother's Day one. Like it just is all over the fucking place. All over the place.
It's definitely like I think there are some okay movies in here, and I think, but just together as this motif of holidays is really thin when you come close. Those just tonal shifts, because it's different from one to one. And my movie's no different. But I think the Father's Day episode is at least the most unique. I think the most well done. It's barely a horror movie, and maybe that's an issue, because it's a horror movie for 3 seconds, and it's the worst 3 seconds of the whole movie. But yeah, so Father's Day tells a very simple, odd story, but it's done in a very interesting way. So it's this woman comes home, she gets a package, and it's a cassette tape, and she plays it, and it's her father on the other end, and we come to realize that she has not spoken to her father in maybe 20 years, 25 years, something like that. The woman is played by Jocelyn Donahue, who was also in The House of the Devil, which is the main character in that. Yep. And it's voiced by some guy named Michael Gross, who has no other credit except for this. But excellent casting in terms of the voice. He's got a very kind of haunting sort of way that he's reading his lines in this.
So it's not...
only hear him.
Oh, go ahead.
So it's not Michael Gross from Tremors?
According to this is his only credit.
Huh.
So not Michael Gross from Tremors. Yeah.
Wild.
The voice reminded me of like the guy who, if you've ever listened to the podcast Welcome to Night Vale, like it just reminded me of that. He's got that very, fatherly kind of deep, but very like almost prim and proper in the way he talks. Not authoritarian, but just like very firm and like enunciates very well, and it makes things feel extra creepy.
Yeah. So she gets this recording, she listens to it, and he basically tells her is like, if she ever wants to see him again, to go to the spot where they last saw each other and turn the tape over, and he'll give her instructions on the other side. So there's some familial drama that goes on with her mother. She basically calls her on the phone, like, I can't believe he's still alive. You never told me this. This is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. So the scene, I guess, because if we can narrow it down to a scene, the scene is basically when she goes to the beach and she turns the tape over and she listens to it. And it's a recording that he made on the very last day that she saw him. And she can hear herself when she's like 5 or 6, whatever. She's very young, playing with him, playing in the background in the beach. And he takes her on this walk and he's narrating to her as well as talking to her younger self as they're walking to go to this place, which it's very ambiguous what is going on really throughout the whole time. But he eventually directs her and he's talking to her younger self is like, basically, I'm going away. This is going to be the last time we talk to each other. I know you want to come with me, but you can't. And she's basically listening to her own heartbreak as she's making this trek. Mm-hmm. And it's just an interesting walk through where she's seeing, which is now like this dilapidated kind of shore town, which I guess 25 years ago was a place to go with your daughter. Eventually she winds up at like this abandoned building, which she walks through, and she's seeing the places where her dad was when she basically saw him for the last time. He tells her to go sit down on there. He goes, talks to a woman to go see him is kind of the, what he's there. He's there for an appointment, saying, and then, we hear him see her for the last time. We hear her, cry out for him and, ask him not to leave and all that kind of stuff. And he just leaves her behind as like a 6-7-year-old with like what is essentially like a secretary of whoever him is. Yeah. She goes through a door and it gets dark and late, and this is kind of the point where he's like, well, this is where you're going to meet me, through this door. And this is sort of where I would say this is where my scene ends, because everything after this is awful. She essentially finds what maybe is her dad, maybe it's him, maybe it's the him that he was talking about, who knows, sitting with his back towards her in this other abandoned building. And she crosses what looks to be some sort of salt line or circle. And basically the monster at the end of the story just reveals itself. She screams, and that's the end of the story.
It does a scream. She does a scream.
I just think this was a really fascinating story. And if this is a win, that's fine. But at the same time, I just really wanted like more attention to the story, because I really thought this was a fascinating kind of idea, execution of like this story that is about loss and about this girl coming to grips with, the father that abandoned her all those years ago, and having to deal with listening to her have to go through that all over again. It was just such a fascinating story to me. And it is ruined by the last 3-5 seconds of it and is such an odd placement in this movie also, because it doesn't have to be this oh, this is Father's Day sort of story.
Mm-hmm.
This could be a short film on its own.
Right.
And I think because all of the other movies are not this like dark and like very personal of a story. Like, I don't know if it's biographical. It's like directed by a dude, so that's a difference right there. But it's directed by a guy named Anthony Scott Burns, who I don't think has many interesting credits other than this movie. There's a couple of some movies called Our House, Come True. I don't know any of these. A lot of short films. They got a couple of different credits in like music department, stuff like that. But it was just a very interesting story. And I wound up picking this one because, as I mentioned earlier, I had reviewed this back when we were writing reviews, which was sort of the precursor to our podcast. And I gave this whole movie a 3 out of 10. I think it's a little harsh. I don't know if it's a 3 out of 10, but there was usually I wound up when I was doing those 31 Days of Horror reviews, I usually wound up in like the 5 to 5.5 range. So I think and I mentioned that this movie this short stuck out to me as a bright spot in an otherwise movie I did not enjoy. So definitely wanted to bring this to the table as a film that I really enjoyed. I think it's so much different than all the other ones is really what I could say.
Yeah, it's I mean, 3 out of 10 is probably not that far off. It's probably like, it's really because I mean the Kevin Smith one alone takes it down a whole point. Like that's a piece of shit. But there's a couple that
right after this one.
I know.
So
it's seriously whoever decided to put those side by side, like should be, in the immortal worlds of our Lord and Savior Garfield should be drugged in the street and shot.
Well, I mean, the movie runs chronologically.
Yeah, it goes. Yeah. It fit, and then Christmas and New Year's. You're right. I didn't even make that.
There's a long time, but there's a long time between Father's Day and
well, and also
and
New Year's
now.
Should really be first, then, even though it's technically New Year's Eve, I guess. But anyway, goddamn, those back to back are just it's brutal. It's brutal to go because this is actually, like you said, the scene, because everything else is so silly for the most part. And then that portion where she's walking and essentially she's, playing, daddy scavenger hunt, from the beach. And she has to hear herself as a 5-year-old girl being confused and scared because her dad is basically saying, I'm leaving you, is heart wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so much more emotionally charged than anything. You don't care about a single character in any of the anthologies except for this, even remotely. It's really is heart wrenching as you hear all this stuff. And of course, like then she's listening to it and having to relive it, like you mentioned. Then they go into this like weird, like you said, it was like an abandoned building. It almost was like reminded me of like a Masonic temple or something that had been abandoned. Yeah. And as you're walking into this, like the tension is really kind of, mounting to kind of a fever pitch. Like you're on the edge of your seat there for a second, and then like you said, bing bong daddy's a vampire, like that kind of leaves you hanging in the last 5 seconds. You're like, oh no. It's
interesting because like what we're hearing on the tape and what she's listening to, like there's nothing inherently sinister about it. Even when they get to the Masonic temple or whatever temple this is, like there's nothing inherently sinister aside from the fact that he's about to abandon her for him. But it's just everything else around it, like the setting is, and it's probably overused, but the setting, it feels very Silent Hill-esque because she's alone, she's walking on streets, like there's no cars around. And everything is kind of that deep, like blue-green tinge.
Yeah, so it's that like Twilight-y type of...
Yeah.
Not the movie Twilight, I know we mentioned that.
Right.
But
Not the movie Twilight, but the actual occurrence.
Yeah.
But like, everything is kind of dingy and run down and like deserted and empty. I wish there was a little bit more inside the temple, just a few more clues as to what the hell was going on. Like, what were they actually after? Because it feels... did either of you guys see the movie The Empty Man?
No.
Nope.
It's pretty okay. I would say check it out. But, like, there's a lot of, like, kind of culty stuff to it without being, like, a, full-on... It feels more like Heaven's Gate cult stuff. Rather than
supernatural.
Sure. Yeah. Even though it does like turn supernatural and there is more supernatural stuff, but in the beginning, there's like, it feels a lot more grounded Heaven's Gatey stuff. So it feels like that's what she was going into, is like, the former Heaven's Gate kind of recruitment center. And then, she finds her dad or whatever. That's that's why it just gets confusing. It's like, and then it does a scream and it's like, who cares?
Yeah. It was really reminding me of, and I've been just reading a lot of like short form horror and weird fiction lately. It was really reminding me of like a Robert Matheson short story, like a something you would see on the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Like the whole time, really, even it felt like an adaptation of a Robert Matheson short story, which is a positive.
Yeah.
It definitely felt out of place among a bunch of other just turds floating in the punch bowl.
Yeah. I will say though, I get why you picked this one, because I think as a film, it's probably the strongest one, because, as we said, like, it's the only film you get actually emotionally connected to the character, because you actually kind of get connected with her character twice the same way she is, because you get connected with past her being upset that she's losing her dad, but then you get that recycle of feelings while she's, listening to it, and you watch present day her. But like, I'm surprised you didn't go with the kind of the Jesus Bunny Man. Just the scene of like when the girl discovers him, because I feel like that's actually like a really strong jump scare when she tries to run down the hall and it just jumps out at her, because it's a real jump scare, and it's real that the danger is now here. It announces itself, but then also like it gets really weird and upsetting, and like, then he turns her into a bunny with his fucking egg communion. Like, well,
then the chick coming out of the stigmata wounds and stuff, that's by far the most. Whenever you said, hey, when Steve told me this was the pick, I was like, oh, it's got to be the Jesus Bunny Man.
Yeah.
Or the other one I did remember a little bit of was the last one, which is the New Year's Eve one with the serial killer running into a serial killer kind of thing, which is it's a little predictable. Sure. It's okay, but it's much better executed than virtually all the other ones.
Yeah, that one's predictable, and also like I felt like they could have done something better with the ending of like making it kind of almost more comedic, like when they both find out they're going to kill each other.
And then, then they would have been like, "Isn't this awkward?" You know?
Like now it's an awkward first kill or whatever, or something like that. You do something. You could do something funny with that. I don't know, but it just kind of ends, and it's like, whatever.
Yeah, this one was definitely the most emotionally charged one, and definitely most affecting one, I'll say.
Yeah, and like I said, it's the good parts of it. Not so much a horror movie. And I think that almost feels like, oh, I forgot to make a horror movie. Let me rectify that in the last 5 seconds.
Yeah.
But like, because I'd be happy if that scene just ends right before whatever it is sitting in that chair turns around. You know, if we just see the back of its head and just like cut to black, I'd be happy with that.
Or if you just saw it stand up from the chair, that's all you need as like something effective. Like, oh, what we thought was a corpse in a chair stands up. Oh, scary. Oh, what happened? Oh, bye.
Yeah. I don't need the CG sort of ending that Paranormal Activity had, the original, where she like lunges at the camera.
Yeah, you don't need stretchy mouth. What was the movie there's a movie, and I think it's called Terrified. We've talked about it on the podcast. I picked it on a Showdown long time ago. It's such a great, effective, atmospheric, genuinely scary movie, but it ends with something similar to that. I won't completely spoil it, but you're not watching it for the ending. But if you watch, I believe it's like Colombian or Venezuelan movie or something like that. It's fantastic, but it ends in a very similar way, and you're just like, God right. Damn it! You were walking across the stage at graduation with your cap on. They handed you the fucking diploma, and you tripped and fell down the stairs.
Yeah. Everybody saw your butt, and it was weird.
And then your pants fell down, and then you puked, and it was just But
yeah, but that is the Father's Day part of holidays.
Yeah. I liked watching this again, just to remember the things that I forgot, and like I said, there are a couple that are pretty effective. But
yeah, I've never seen it before. You said I'd seen it before. Well, I haven't. All this was new to me, and I hated it.
I thought it's because we've talked about the Bunny Man before, so I guess I for some reason in my head you had been part of that conversation, but maybe that was a conversation with myself. Because I think around Easter time, I mentioned this because like this movie gets the most play on social media and mentions around Easter time because it's the most, it's the one people most, and there's so little Easter horror, right?
It's this and Critters too, so it's
and you've been championing that's an Easter movie for a long time.
It fucking rules.
You've been dying on that hill.
There's an Easter bunny man. He gets his tummy eaten. There's a whole bunch of thing about eggs. It's an Easter movie.
Oh man! All right. Let me get into this one. Let me wrap it up with just an absolute fucking gem here, you guys. So, I chose a scene from, as I mentioned, 2008 film, directed, written, and produced by M. Night Shyamalan. M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong himself. The Happening from 2008, just with a star-studded cast of some of my least favorite performers in the world, with some notable exceptions. You've got one Mr. Mark Wahlberg, who I maintain is a bad actor. He picked the wrong profession. He's bad at it. This movie is his magnum opus of bad acting. Like there's something to be talked about here in a second of like the tone. Is it intentional? Is it not? We don't know. It's very strange, but he is genuinely, I think when somebody does a Mark Wahlberg impression, they are doing an impression of him in this movie.
Yes.
Like when, when Andy Samberg does his famous one of him, like on SNL, when he's talking to the goat, he's like, Hey, Mr. Goat, say hi to your mother for me, or whatever. That whole bit. Yeah. I swear he's doing that. Like he's doing The Happening, right?
As preparation for this episode, I went back. We have covered on our podcast The Happening, and we make that exact point.
Oh, really? Yeah, he's just wide-eyed, deer in the headlights, the weird pitch to his voice, but like still kind of strangely monotoned. I don't know. It's a terrible performance. And then you have Zooey Deschanel, who, to her credit, listen, I like me some New Girl. I'll watch some New Girl. I haven't seen a lot of other things with her in it. But Elf, love me some Elf, right? I think she's trying to match his energy a little bit.
Oh, for sure.
So to her credit, she's trying, and he's giving her just dog shit to work with.
I think she figured it out like day one on set with him of how it was going to be. And she's like, oh, there's no way I'm giving 110 for this.
No.
Yeah. I think Wahlberg's performance also flies in the face of the idea of like, I'm sure M. Night Shyamalan would be like, oh, well, this is just a throwback to 50s monster movies. He never told Mark Wahlberg that.
Right.
Because Mark Wahlberg did not get that memo.
No.
He's so earnest in this movie he's playing a science teacher, but he's really playing the gym teacher that was subbing a science class that one day.
Yeah. He should have been 2000 Maniacs teacher, but you know what I mean? Like he should have been like the teacher that go into a science convention.
Right. Yeah.
Or whatever the fuck.
Who's
that
also
premise
somehow
is
a hitchhiker and a bum and
Well, no, because his car broke down. Come on, Steve.
Whatever.
But
He's
no,
still
he
hitchhiked.
should be. Yeah, I know. He should be something like that. But no, he, like you said, Anthony, he's so earnest, and he's so, like, again, wide-eyed and confused, and it's so strange. Like, it's like Mark Wahlberg, the day before he got to set, he read the script and goes, "So I ain't gonna be punching anybody? How the fuck is this gonna work?" And he just winged it.
Hey, hey, M. Night. At what point do I get to punch the trees?
Can I punch the wind? How's that gonna work? Yeah, but
Zooey Deschanel's character too. It's not so much about her acting or her character. Before we meet her in this film, we are told we're supposed to hate her guts.
Weirdly,
because she is supposed to be cheating on Mark Wahlberg, and is it John Leguizamo cannot stand her.
Yeah,
he like says that the day you married her, I knew she was going to divorce you.
Yeah,
what the fuck? This is gonna be our lead female character that we are going to watch throughout the rest of this film, and you're setting it up that we should hate her.
Well, and also Mark
throughout the rest of the movie, there's no reason to dislike Zooey Deschanel.
Not even a little bit. She goes along with all his stupid bullshit. Like, she's just along for the ride. She almost has no agency, really, as a character.
Yeah.
And then Mark Wahlberg has the face of an adulterer. Like, if you look at Mark Wahlberg, you're like, that man cheats on his wife. Like, it doesn't play. It just, the casting doesn't make any sense for that.
Yeah.
Like, she's sweet, like, as twee as you possibly can be.
Right.
She is the queen of twee. She is Zooey Deschanel. Maybe she wasn't at this point.
I'm pretty sure she was. Like,
you're probably right.
Like, when did 500 Days of Summer come out? Because that's when it was cemented.
Oh, before this, for sure. Yeah.
That was.
I think it might have been after
was
this.
It really?
But this was still around She and Him sort of era when she was doing her twee music.
You know,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, 500 Days of Summer was 2009, so just after this.
Yeah, this is when you could buy all of her super twee acoustic music at, like, Starbucks. Like, they were selling her CDs at Starbucks.
Anyway.
And
the big marital problem between them, besides when we find out, is that she doesn't want to have a kid with him yet because she feels like he's too immature, which is a very valid problem to have with when you're married to Mark Wahlberg. You know, he's still less than a decade probably from beating up Vietnamese immigrants in the streets of Boston. It's in Philly the year, but he could probably be that's the it's Philly Mark Wahlberg might be even
it's
worse
all racism. It's fine.
Listen, guys, I'm going to say this right now, and I work in Philly. I spend a lot of time there. Same thing. Philly and Boston, same thing.
He's probably the one that destroyed Hitchbot. Is Philly Mark Wahlberg?
He did. He tipped it over.
He did. He ran up and just did a double foot drop kick on it.
Yeah. Hey, get out of my town.
Hey, I don't like your Asian name. Double foot drop kick. Fuck Mark Wahlberg. He's the worst. And all the Wahlbergs and Jenny McCarthy. They all suck. Die in a fire. Anyway, Zooey Deschanel, you're fine. Whatever. I have no issue with Zooey Deschanel. John Leguizamo. Love me some John Leguizamo.
He is surprisingly restrained in this movie.
He is, because I think Spawn when I think John Leguizamo, and just unhinged. And he is very, and he actually has there are actually a couple of scenes that I think are a lot more affecting than the one I picked. And the one I remember, because we mentioned this on the last episode when we were announcing our picks, but so because Anthony wasn't obviously there. I saw this movie in the theaters. I was one of the 5 people I think that saw this in the theaters. I saw it on a date with a girl that I dated briefly for just a few months. And I remember both of us being like fairly, like, not hating it, walking out, be like, it's kind of a weird movie, but okay, whatever. But I remember the scene when, because you were looking for the John Leguizamo's wife, right? And his daughter is there. The one of the big goal here is they're looking for his wife. And whenever, they kind of have a lead on what they're going to do or whatever, and then he takes his seatbelt off, crashes the Jeep, intentionally launches himself out the window, but then he doesn't die. And the first thing he does is sit up and grab the glass and start sawing at his wrist. I remember that being a pretty effective scene. And there's a few like that are just like shocking violence to people, either that are just completely random and out of left field, or, people that you maybe have come to care about a little bit, at least. I would say John Leguizamo, his, family, maybe the only people you give a shit about. But those are the main characters. Betty Buckley plays Mrs. Jones, who's kind of this like person they show up at her house, which is a weird part in the scene. Great character actor Frank Collison plays the nursery owner. He was in a lot of movies around this time, and he's got googly eyes, and that's why you remember him. He's an old guy, tall, kind of creepy looking dude with googly eyes.
He looks like Sid Haig's brother.
He does. He looks like Sid Haig's tall, lanky brother.
Yeah.
And those are, basically the only people you give a shit about at all.
His part in this film is hilarious because he basically he rescues Mark Wahlberg and Zoe and takes them away from the diner or whatever. But he takes them to a nursery for plants that he runs, and he's in the nursery and he's just talking about hot dogs. And he's like, hot dogs get a bad rap, like they're made of meat, they're full of nutrients. Also, I think it's the plants that are killing everybody. Anyway, you want some hot dogs? And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So this is the other thing that I should say. So because I do want to read the IMDb plot synopsis. It's really brief, real quick. And then I'll explain why I think it's important, because here's the plot synopsis on IMDb. A science teacher, his wife, and a young girl, no mention of John Leguizamo's character, struggle to survive a plague that causes those affected to commit suicide. So that is a little bit misleading. I mean, that is what happens. Don't get me wrong, but for those of you who were maybe too young or not paying attention in 2008, they marketed this movie in a very unique way, in a very smart way. And it got horrible reviews, real quick, 18% on Rotten Tomatoes. So Steve's got 15%. This got 18%, a 2.0 on Letterboxd, 34 on Metacritic, bad scores. It got absolutely panned by critics for the most part. There was one that I did want to because it was just horribly. Here's a couple of them. Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal said that the film was, quote, a woeful clunker of a paranoid thriller, and highlighted its, quote, befuddling infelicities, insistent banalities, and shambling pace, and pervasive ineptitude. It's like, fuck you, dude. Like you're just being a verbose dickhead at this point. Stephen King liked it, by the way, apparently. But they're just like, it was critically panned. And it almost felt like it was kind of a little bit of a hit job on this movie, because people genuinely turned on M. Night Shyamalan like hard for this movie. He had came out with obviously The Sixth Sense, which was, I think it was Academy Award nominated movie. And then you've got Signs, which was super well received. You got some other weird movies he made that were well received. And then this one was marketed in such a polarizing way. They did not come out and say anything about, quote, what The Happening was. So they almost marketed it like these, The Tingler or something, like these 50s sci-fi type of movies where it's like, you don't know what's going to happen. We're not going to tell you. And of course the title, very, very vague. And the previews, a lot of the trailers that you would see were just people dying or they didn't even explicitly show that they were always killing themselves. But it was heavily suggested, I guess, in these super weird out their ways, but they never suggested anything about what was causing it, how it was happening, how frequently it was happening, or if it was a plague or virus. None of that was even hinted at. It was extremely vague in the promotions. So it was very, garnered a lot of attention for that reason. And for whatever reason, people in 2008 did not have the appetite for that. And really, like, even before it came out, people were like, fuck this movie. Like, they were really against it.
Yeah.
And then it just got critically panned. But like I said, it felt like such a hit job. It's not a good movie. Again, the performances are bad. Mark Wahlberg is woeful in it. But it felt like this movie was destined to get panned, even though it actually didn't do that bad financially. So I do want to like preface that and like provide some context around the movie around that time, because it is pretty like that was a big selling point for the movie at the time. And I think the vagueness was potentially, I don't know, played very much to its advantage.
Yeah. I think at this point too, people were pretty like, they were getting tired of Shyamalan's shtick of,
well, they definitely in The Village. People started to turn on in The Village.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Bit. Well, like even Signs, people were like, oh, it was water the entire time.
The water thing was lame. But Signs is, I maintain Signs.
No, Signs is good, like, but I'm just saying that was kind of the first crack in the armor of like, people were like, all right. But then The Village came out and were like, oh, you motherfucker. And then,
you know what though? Fuck that. Cause The Village is good and I like it and I maintain that it's good.
It's a, you know what? I only recently have I watched The Village, and I had known the twist and everything like that, but I've only in the past two or 3 years, it was the first time I saw The Village. It doesn't suck.
If A24 made The Village now, people would be jizzing in their pants. Like it just
Lady in the Water is the other one that kind of came out before this.
Lady in the Water was before this. And like Lady in the Water was a departure as well, because that wasn't trying to be a horror film per se. Like it had some scary elements, but he was trying to do like a modern fantasy thing. And like, I don't know, it just wasn't my thing. And I didn't care that much about it. So it didn't, I don't know, it didn't bother me one way or the other, but I just think in general, like people were fed up by the happening. And then for the twist, you know, because as you're saying, Brian, like the marketing was super vague, but it had to be because the twist was what was doing it. And then for the twist to be the plants, I think everybody just wanted to throw their popcorn, and they're like, and then like you don't, it doesn't even come at the end of the film. You figure it out pretty, you know, early on.
It does. Yeah. That's the weird thing too, is it's pretty early that it's plants. But like, so I remember having this conversation again with this girl that I was dating at the time. You know, again, we dated briefly, you know, so not didn't have a tremendous amount in common. So I remember us talking afterwards. So we were both into movies and into horror movies and stuff like that. And I remember we neither of us really loved it or hated it, but we had a discussion, I remember, which was like, because as we were walking out of the theater, people were pissed. They were like, what the fuck? Like it was like when I walked out of Halloween Ends. Like people were bummed, like walking out of Halloween. Or no, not Halloween Ends. Halloween Kills. People were bummed walking out of Halloween Kills. Like people I literally had like conversation in the parking lot with strangers that were like, "What is that?" Blah blah. Like, you know, which was really fun. But I remember people doing that with The Happening too. It was like a Friday or Saturday night, and then on the drive home, I remember us being like, "What did they want? What could it have been that they would have liked? Aliens? Did you want it to be aliens? You know what I mean?
Right.
Did you want it to be the government? Like, what would have been satisfying to you?
It's,
you know, so.
But that's the thing is like any of that, like with the film being so based on, and the fact that they spoon feed you everything is.
Oh yeah. Don't get me wrong. It's poorly executed.
Yeah.
Like when people getting pissed about the fact that it's plants.
Right. But I mean, like I guess by the third scene, like you're in the classroom with Mark Wahlberg and they're spoon feeding you the answer to the film, which is like, yeah, sometimes things just happen in nature, guy. You have to deal with it, you know? And then, and then you have another 90 minutes of exactly that. Like, things just happening in nature, you deal with it. And it's like, fuck.
Yeah. They could have held it a little closer to the vest, maybe. Maybe let the cat out of the bag early.
Yeah, and then Hot Dog Guy literally says it out loud. Like, I love hot dogs. Yeah. The plants are killing everybody. Who wants hot dogs?
It is a movie that I guess has some sort of environmental, like, message-ish of, like, humans are bad and we need to really pay attention to the plants. But, like, you never see examples of that in the movie, you know?
Yeah, you never see anybody dumping a bunch of, plastic bottles into the ocean or anything.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think you're right. I think that was part of it. Is really it is an environmental horror film, which is an entire subgenre. But I feel like in 2008 people didn't have the appetite for that. And obviously people knew about global warming, and listen, we grew up in the 90s, people talking about acid rain and all that stuff. So this is not a foreign concept, but for whatever reason 2008 people just didn't have the appetite for it. And I think also the fact that they kind of at least for a portion of it of the movie, and I think a lot of in a lot of the way that it was marketed, they almost suggested that it was like terrorism more than anything, which was obviously something that was way more top of mind for us in the 2000s than climate change or whatever.
Yeah, I think the other thing is the representation of the happening is just cutaways to wind blowing through grass.
Yes.
That's the laziest. The way it's shot, it's just, they keep doing this thing, and it's like, it wouldn't have been any better if it would have had menacing music, but like, so just as a thought exercise, if they did this again, and let's say it was A24 that did, let's say this movie never happened, and A24 is making it, because it feels like, for me, something that they would do. If when the wind was blowing through the trees, there was some like stinging string music happening or something, maybe that would help. But all it is just like, so man, I guess maybe we're safe here, maybe we're not. Trees blowing, somebody shoots themselves, like trees blow again, somebody jumps off a building. Like, they just keep showing the leaves blowing in the trees, and it just doesn't hit home. It doesn't strike you as threatening. It doesn't even really make you think that much. I don't know. It's poorly executed, obviously, but
yeah. And my favorite part is when they announce they have to outrun the wind.
Right.
Like, I don't. Is that possible? Can you outrun the wind?
Yeah. That's a James Taylor song, I think. But yeah. So I'll get into my scene here. There's a couple that I think, like I said, I thought were pretty effective in this movie. Not a lot. Like I said, overall, it's a weird movie. I think also in 2008, like the fact that this movie got made kind of intrigued me. But in any case, you know what I mean? Like, it was a weird movie you didn't see movies like this in the theater that often back then.
No,
not big budget releases. But anyway, so the Central Park scene happens. It's not the first scene, but it's very early on.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
is it the very first scene?
It's the cold open.
Yeah, you're right. It is the cold open. I was thinking the people jumping off the building was the cold open, but you're right.
No, that's the next
so it's
scene.
8:33. Yeah, that's right after that. So 8:33 a.m. Central Park, New York City. The thing that is intriguing about this scene to me to start out with is there's tons of people. It's not like this like sparsely populated area. Like, there are tons of people walking around Central Park. People walking their dogs, people going out their business, people like, look like they're on their lunch break from work. Other people like, just recreationally walking around, roller skating, whatever the fuck. And you get two women sitting on a bench. You get Kristen Connolly, which you would know from Cabin in the Woods. She's the lead in Cabin in the Woods. Any genre fan would recognize her probably from that. She's also in House of Cards. She's not been in a lot else. I feel like I really immediately recognized her from Cabin in the Woods. And I was like, oh, she's in a million things. And I looked and I'm like, she's not really. She is in a lot of things, but not a lot of things that I've seen besides Cabin in the Woods and House of Cards. She was on, she actually did a lot of soap opera work. She was on Guiding Light and As the World Turns for quite a while, it looks like. But again, genre fans would know her from Cabin in the Woods. And then there's a woman, oh boy, I didn't write her name down. Who's the other character? She is from Good Will Hunting.
Allison Folland.
She was also in The Fighter. I recognize her more as a commercial actor. Like I've seen her in commercials and stuff like that, and like little quick appearances on things, and more comedic typically in my experience. But like I said, you might know her from Good Will Hunting. And they're sitting on a park bench in Central Park, friends, assumedly, just kind of chatting. And they start out by saying something along the lines of, hey, where was I again? So they're like talking really in a very vague tone. She's like, where was I? Where was I? And she was like, oh, you were at the part. And they're talking about a book that one of them was reading. And this all happens pretty quickly. You get the creepy wind, like you get the gust of spooky wind, but there's nothing to tell you that it's supposed to be threatening or spooky, but you get the spooky wind, and then you get this distant scream, and Kristen Connolly's character, she kind of is the only, like, she seems to be the last one that is noticing what's happening, or one of the last ones that's affected. So you're seeing it from her perspective. So obviously the, neurotoxin that is being given off by plants, that is being carried on the wind, that is affecting people. And within a matter of moments, it like freezes them, obviously like makes them very confused and disoriented. In some instances, it makes them like revert to something that is familiar to them. Like they'll say something that is like a non sequitur, but it is familiar to them in some capacity, like in this, well, I'll explain in this instance, but like later on when they have the military guy, he starts just out of the blue, talking about, this is my weapon, blah, blah, blah. It was almost like a Full Metal Jacket type of thing where he's talking about his weapon, like anthropomorphizing his gun or whatever. And so you're confused, and then you quickly identify it as like, oh no, something is about to happen. So like the threat level goes from like 0 to 100 really quickly. But that hasn't happened yet. She hears the scream in the distance, and she's like, what was that? Did you hear that? And the other woman doesn't. She doesn't really pay attention to it. And then there's this weird, almost like Lovecraftian thing where it's like a tell, don't show. It's like the opposite of what you would think, where it's like, I'm going to say something scary that's happening and let your brain come up with what you're seeing instead of something you could pretty easily show. And she's like, those people over there look like they're clawing at themselves. And she kind of says it like and that's like a really, if I saw something like that, I don't know that that's the way I would describe it right off the bat. I would be like, what are those people doing over there?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But she goes, those people look like they're, so the way I took this, and maybe I'm leading it, like I'm giving it too much credit, but I took that as now she's starting to be affected, but just surface level, and everyone else is like losing their shit and are about to kill themselves. And then she's like, is that blood? You don't see any blood or anything like that. And then you just look back to, because you're just seeing it from looking straight on at her. And then you turn around and everyone is frozen. Of course, all you know is you just showed up to a movie called The Happening, so you don't know what the fuck's going on. Everyone's frozen. And then she is confused and like, she's not what the fuck, which is what a normal person would do in this situation. Probably. She goes, Claire, are you seeing this? Which to me suggests that like she's starting to be affected in some way. And then the other woman does this like kind of half disoriented phrase where she says, what page was I on? And then she slowly pulls out, it looks like she has like knitting needles that she's using as like to keep her hair up, pulls one out, and then not only stabs herself in the throat, but starts like digging around in her throat with this knitting needle. Unfortunately, this scene, when you look about, and I haven't seen it in a long time, so I was kind of like, saw it through somewhat fresh eyes this time around, even though I knew what was going to happen, obviously. It was a lot more effective than I remembered, because this was one of the scenes that they teased heavily in the trailer, in the previews, which bummed me out, because it would have been extremely effective if you hadn't seen it, for that. And then that's it. And then it just kind of cuts away. So that is the scene. It's quick, it's fast, it's dirty. It's, you don't know these characters. You never see them again. You do get brought back to this spot, which is, specifically the spot in Central Park at the end. But yeah, for as far as a cold open's concerned, thought it was a pretty effective scene, set the tone. Did the rest of the movie kind of let you down? Sure. But as far as a cold open and an effective scene to kind of get you psyched up and set you out on a good trek, I thought it did a pretty good job.
Wait, when do you come back to the Central Park?
At the end. Oh no, I'm sorry, it's not Central Park. It's Paris.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I was going to say.
I was thinking about that.
That's two French people.
That's not Central. Yeah, that's not Central Park. That's Paris. But it is a similar setting. People like sitting there. Yeah. They're in a public park kind of thing. But yeah, no, that's Paris. Never mind. But
yeah, it's a pretty good scene. And it is let down by a lot of them. It does kind of like, I don't know. I think one of this movie's main problems, and not necessarily the problem with the scene, is that it doesn't know its own rules. It's like, why is the cute blonde the last person to be affected by this toxin?
Yeah, right.
At least obviously, you've read into it that you feel like maybe she's being manipulated by it earlier than how I read it, but yeah. It's a part of that is like, and all these people are just frozen. They start walking backwards. It's like, that really stops happening sometime into the movie where people stop doing that. So
yeah,
maybe the plants are just getting stronger.
That's a great point. The movie doesn't. Yeah. Not only are there really not rules, it's they set you up to think that there are like rules of things that are going to happen, that are going to be telltale signs. But then there's never any consistency with them. Yeah,
I think, and that's always like one of the biggest problems with this movie. I mean, aside from everything else, but like, because they're not using a good example from nature for this happening, and then because everybody kind of kills himself in a different way, it just feels like it's too loose. You're playing too loosey-goosey with it, M. Night. Whereas, like, if you think of, like, The Last of Us has, like, a lot of really good science to set up what's happening. So, like, there's really cordyceps mushrooms that control insects out in the world.
Right.
And the way they explained the propagation was through, like, the spore infestation of wheat in, like, Jakarta, which is like where the world gets most of its wheat from, is from like that part of Asia. And so like it would stand to reason that like it would also become the most easily infected by. So there's all this good science and backstory and building. And then the happening is just like, what if the tree said you die? Well, what if they said, what if they said,
there's never, because that is the thing that I think a good science fiction horror movie needs, is some fucking science fiction. You know what I mean? It's like, think of all the greatest science fiction, The Thing, and, and they maybe it's not super deep, but they are talking about how, okay, so it mimics, this other organisms, and it tries to, no, this is just, like you said, it's so surface level. And for a movie to have the science be so surface level, but also kind of simultaneously be really preachy.
Yeah.
It's just so hateable.
And also presented by one of our dumbest.
Honestly, guys, thought experiment. Vin Diesel, it makes it better or worse if it's Vin Diesel instead of Mark Wahlberg.
Possibly better. I know Mark Wahlberg is a noted racist and Catholic, so I can't trust him at all. Vin Diesel, I like his race. I have no idea what is going on in his life.
You like his race, but you mean like car race?
Just ambiguity all over.
Yeah. I thought you meant his propensity to be both fast and furious.
That too.
But here's the thing with that. Well, Anthony, what are your thoughts? Curious to get your thoughts. Vin Diesel, better or worse than Mark Wahlberg in this role?
I have been a noted hater of Vin Diesel, and like you, I've only seen one of the Fast and the Furious movies, and that's Too Fast, Too Furious, actually. Okay. But Mark Wahlberg is so much more dislikable. He should have been on one of the planes in 9/11 and tried to prove himself right. Really.
Oh and yeah, didn't he say that
really
didn't he say the plane would have never went down if he was on it or something?
Yeah,
not on my watch.
Oh, he's such a piece of shit. Here's what I would say: the only reason I don't know if I would have been okay with Vin Diesel in it is Mark Wahlberg seems like that dumbass, Southie kid who's just the least dumb of all his friends. So he goes to college because maybe his parents have a little bit of money. He doesn't know what to do in college. Somebody gets in his ear. He decides he's going to be a teacher, and then he just becomes a football coach, and then phones in his teaching. You know what I mean? I cannot abide by the idea of Vin Diesel being a teacher.
That's fair.
Vin Diesel graduating with any type of diploma is irreprehensible to me as a story element.
Man, I gotta look this up now to see if he did, because now I'm thinking, I'm wondering if he has a story like Dolph Lundgren, where Dolph Lundgren has 2 masters in chemical engineering and shit. I wonder if Vin Diesel has that secretly in his pocket.
Yeah, he's got a doctorate in philosophy or something.
He's got
that.
3 STEM degrees.
Yeah, I don't know, but I can't imagine. Imagine Vin Diesel as your teacher. Just imagine.
Yeah, honestly,
just walking in with a tank top.
It's
wearing a tie with a tank top.
It's not hard for me because I went to such a dumbass rural school. I had no less than 5 teachers who were also coaches. So that wouldn't surprise me at all.
You're right. I did too.
Yeah. When you go,
something about his face. I don't know.
Something about it.
All right. So now that we have those out of the way, it is time to vote.
Mm-hmm.
I am gonna propose that we vote in the same order that we did.
Okay.
That we went through it. So, Steve, what's your vote? Tell us what you're thinking.
I just wanted to add one more note about The Happening before I vote.
Oh yeah, please.
Zoe Deschanel. This is the first time seeing The Happening post New Girl, and so her character in New Girl is named Jess. And I just found it very funny at times that the little girl, her name is Jess in The Happening. And so sometimes my brain was just enjoying the fact that Zoe Deschanel would say, Jess needs a sandwich it now. And I was like, yeah, it's that's her character in New Girl. Jess needs a sandwich.
Yeah. I just kept finding myself going, who's that girl?
It's Jess.
It's Jess.
Yeah, my vote is going to go to Anthony.
Right.
I mean, obviously I'm voting for my movie first. So as a second pick, as a second pick, I'm going to go with Anthony. It's a more extended sequence. You get more emotionally involved. The opening to The Happening is fine because it's there's a world of possibility of what could be happening. But then what actually happens, and you go, yuck, ucky, uck.
But that's not what we're talking about, Steve.
I know that's not what we're talking about, but I'm just saying, like, this cold open could go in front of anything. And it's, it's fine. Like, you don't see much. And even the way these characters on the bench talk and deliver is weird. Like, everybody's performance in the movie is weird. And maybe you can say it's because the trees are giving them COVID brain or whatever the entire time. Maybe that's what it is. But it's just so, I don't know. It's so weird. It's so like laying everything out on the doorstep. And the scene is relatively short too. It's only like 2 minutes. Whereas
it is. Yeah, it's quite short.
Whereas like I'm willing to give Anthony's choice, like from the time that she starts walking to the time that she goes through the door. And like when she crosses the door and like you have this other location with the salt ring, I would start that as a new scene. But I think, the main character following the directions is a scene. And it just is more effective because even though you don't get too much scary until like the very last moment, there is just something like the way it's winding you down a hallway that's dark. And, you get an effective, emotional connection again through both her younger self and her current self. So, it's also just well shot and just, you're always squinting into the fog or squinting off into the distance, trying to see something, trying to figure something out. So, I just think it's more effective. But it's not better than Monster Truck Crazy Demolition Derby. You guys are stupid.
But what about the wind though?
Yeah.
Pretty scary stuff.
Yeah. Guess what? There's wind in both of our movies too.
There's a wind in yours.
Sure there is. The wind carries the smoke up.
When the
winds carry the smoke up.
When the trucks go by really fast.
There's that too.
When the trucks go by really fast, there's a bunch of wind. All right, Anthony. What are your thoughts? What are you voting on?
Okay, so I was trying to think of what's the criteria for voting. Are we what's my criteria for voting? Like whether or not is the scene such a standout against the rest of the movie? Obviously, I'm picking mine first. Let's get that out of the way. Is this movie this piece such a standout of an otherwise terrible movie? And I don't know if either one really stands out in terms of that either way. I think The Happening, it's the best scene in the movie, but it fits in with what we eventually do see. There are like the same vibes. It's not like something like certain scenes that that were talked about. Like I think the Jason X trees again, beating the campers against the tree. That's such a self-contained moment in that movie that is different than everything else you see. And I think here both The Happening, that scene fits in with the rest of the movie, as does the scene from Maximum Overdrive. I will say The Happening is my second favorite movie we covered in which a vague event out of human control occurs, which causes inanimate objects to come to life for the sole purpose of killing humans, forcing those humans from their homes. A character has a conversation with said inanimate object. The character is run over by a lawnmower, and everything ultimately ends because of another vague event out of human control occurring.
Yeah. Is your favorite Maximum Overdrive?
Yeah. Yes. I think my brain is.
I was going to say because they both all those things happen in both those movies. I think.
Yes. I think my brain is a little warped because when Steve picks Maximum Overdrive, and because I do a bad movie podcast, I was like, well, Maximum Overdrive is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, is it bad? Yeah. So I think I do have to pick Monster Trucks Blowing Up, despite the fact that it's arguably a bad movie, but I think it's still a pretty good one.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah.
So that is my long-winded way of saying that while The Happening is definitely a worse movie, I think the scene from Maximum Overdrive is a better better part of that movie.
Okay. Yeah, listen, fair enough. I'm not the happening sucks. If we're talking about movies that are less bad, I'm gonna lose.
Yeah. I think you did the best job at picking the worst movie.
Thank you. I'll take that. All right. Dang it. I will say this. I very much like Maximum Overdrive better as a movie. I'm a little torn here. Because I like Maximum Overdrive as a movie. I don't even necessarily think this is the best part of the movie or the best scene in the movie. Anthony, your pick, I really liked it. It was definitely the most effective part of any of it, but it also kind of wasn't even really it was the least horror related part. But it was decidedly a horror anthology, so it's hard to say that. And you know what? Even though the last little 3-second thing, Bing Bong Daddy's a vampire, it did make it a horror movie. So if it served any purpose to your benefit, is that you can't say it wasn't a horror movie when Daddy's got big stretchy mouth.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I think I gotta go with Anthony's pick. It was very effective. It was so dramatically different than any other part of the movie, which I couldn't have cared less about any of the characters in any of the other segments of the movie. And in this instance, it felt like a weird, well executed, artistically shot, emotionally driven sequence. It's like if you're going through the $5 DVD bin at Walmart and you're just finding like Medea Goes to Jail and shit like that, and fucking Paw Patrol DVDs, and then all of a sudden you find fucking Godfather 2 or something. You're like, whoa, that was weird. That didn't seem like it belongs here. So for that reason, I think I got to pick Anthony's first. As much as it pains me to hand the championship belt over in the month of my birth to a guest, I think I got to pick Anthony's.
Shameful.
Oh man, I just came in here and David Arquetted this thing.
Oh man, I don't even know what's going to happen yet. I think we got to cancel I think we got to stop the podcast.
Show's over. I don't know.
It's done. I think it's our last episode.
I got a question before we try to move on to those bigger questions. Do you think like the last 5 seconds of Spooky Grave Encounter's face, do you think that was like tacked on to make it fit with the anthology? You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of these anthologies kind of just like scoop up films that are out there looking for a place to go. And like, they're just like, okay, you can be a part of our anthology, but you have to have Spooky Scary Face at the end because we're all doing Spooky Scary Face.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it feels that way. It definitely feels that way, that this was just like I think I said earlier, it was like, oh, I forgot to make this a horror movie. Let me throw something in this.
Because like the last two shots, like the scary dad in the chair, the actress isn't in that shot, and then it's kind of a wide shot of that empty set. So it's like maybe they just did a couple quick 2-tree reshoots without the actress, and they're like Spooky Dad and Temple and Scary Now.
Yeah, because there's really nothing about Father's Day anywhere earlier that I can remember. Maybe there was. I did find myself thinking that it would be really funny if you see the tape and it's like from Dad, the tape, and she pops the tape in. And if it was just like Steely Dan or Rush or something, some dad band. It was just like Dad's tunes. Dad's rockin' tunes.
Bob Seger crossed
yeah, you might
out.
Be right.
Last Will and Testament.
Yeah.
I taped over my Seeger for this.
Damn it.
So.
But yeah, I mean, I guess there is a shot of her screaming, so there had to be some sort of resolve. But that could have been as ambiguous as the rest of the movie too.
All right. Yeah.
True.
All right. Well, the one thing we do know Anthony gets to do is Anthony gets to pick our punishment film.
I do. I gotta think about it.
Obviously,
I have not thought about this.
You're welcome to come back and do that episode as well next week, but
sure,
you get to pick our punishment.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give it some thought. My first initial thought is, wouldn't be a bad idea to just cover holidays, but I'll give it a little more thought than that.
We can surprise the boys and ghouls at home on what that punishment movie is going to be. Keep in mind that you also, if you're going to be a guest, you also have to watch the punishment episode, which I have on occasion forgotten myself and then been like, why did I say I would watch that again? But generally it's worth it. So, all right, guys, any other final thoughts on these here good scenes in bad movies before we wrap this sumbitch up?
I think you're both wrong. Fucking explosions rule. And by both,
you did just pick explosions.
Explosions are awesome, especially when they're real. I'm just so starved for non-special effects explosions, non-CGI.
Yeah,
I'm so starved for non-CGI. I get so horny when I see it real.
I'm just imagining Steve laying in bed at night, like looking at his phone, just going on YouTube and typing in real explosion compilations and just sitting there going,
awesome.
Fuck yeah, hell yeah. Falling asleep to explosions. All right, guys. Well, tune in next week when we talk about whatever the hell punishment movie Anthony decides to punish our insolent asses with. Also, as always, go over on the social medias and follow us. And if you want to give us one of them 5-star reviews on the podcatcher apps, that's always welcome. Send us a little DM. And we'll send you some damn old stickies in the mail as well. We got some Halloween Forever stickers that we'll send your way. And then Anthony, remind us one more time, where can we find you? Obviously on wherever better podcasts are sold, we can find you. But what's them socials that the boys and girls can check you out at?
Yeah, we're TicTam Pod. That's TCTAM Pod on Twitter or X. Unfortunately, Instagram and Threads, I guess. Who cares? Another social media app.
Yeah.
TicTam Pod. Also, They Call This a Movie on TikTok, so check us out there. And yeah, I think those are all the places. We're not on Blue Sky or anything like that, because I don't really want to go through finding another audience on another. So it's so exhausting.
I'm getting to the point in my life where I'm almost fuck social media old. Like I'm almost that age where I just want to delete everything, besides maybe Instagram. But anyway, guys, thank you, Anthony, for coming on. It was a lot of fun, as always. Looking forward to having you back, whether it's on our punishment episode or hopefully another time down the road. If you'll grace us with your presence, it's always fun. And for the Halloween is Forever crew, I'm Brian.
I'm gonna explode.
All right, see you later, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.